Hey everyone, this is Six Path Weeb back again with another discussion. Today's topic is, Naruko with a tanto, what then? Part 2. Before we dive in, just a quick disclaimer, everything you see here is purely for entertainment and discussion. I don't own any of the anime footage used, full credit goes to the original creators and copyright holders. Alright, let's get into it. Naruko looked at the two teammates who seemed slightly unsettled by her words and pointed toward one of them. Tenten-chan, I'll spar with you first. With that, she rested her hand on the hilt of Soul Eater, but didn't draw it immediately, curious to see how Tenten would make her opening move. In the back of her mind, a cheerful hum from Riku signaled approval. Tenten grinned at Naruko and, after receiving a nod from Guy-sensei, leapt forward with her tonfa flashing in quick combinations, occasionally mixing in light kicks. Naruko was impressed she managed to avoid so many strikes, though the kicks weren't too forceful, so she didn't bother blocking every single one. After a few exchanges, Naruko swiftly unsheathed Soul Eater, slicing through one of the wooden tonfa, surprising both herself and Tenten. Naruko quickly followed up with a playful kick, but Tenten nimbly leapt back, spinning her remaining weapon. Well, that was unexpected, Tenten admitted with a smirk. But half a tonfa is still a tonfa, so I'm not out yet. Before she could finish her words, Naruko dashed forward with renewed energy, slashing in quick arcs and adding a few experimental thrusts. Both kunoichi clearly held back enough to ensure their spar stayed safe. On the sidelines, Lee pumped his fist with excitement. Yosh! This spirited training match will help Naruko-chan understand that a fighter must learn not only the range of their weapon, but the harmony between style and skill. Neji remained quiet, arms folded, watching closely. Guy-sensei analyzed Naruko's technique, noting her clumsy yet promising swordplay. The curious shape of her blade seemed to shimmer oddly with every swing. Naruko's grin never faltered. With one upward slash, she pointed her free hand at Tenten. Dark fire. On instinct, Tenten vaulted into the air as a small, glowing fireball shot from Naruko's palm. It singed her tonfa, leaving a mark, but she pressed forward and brought it down in a wide arc, only for another piece to chip away. Nobody paid much attention to the faint smoky smell from the weapon, but when a nearby tree cracked and tumbled, all eyes turned in surprise. Naruko blinked, scratching her head sheepishly. Oops. Tenten gaped at the tree, while Guy-sensei inspected the stump with a thoughtful look. Naruko-chan, why does it appear as though the impact spread outward from the center? Naruko shrugged, sliding Soul Eater back into its sheath as she walked over. That's just how dark fire works. Even Soul Eater doesn't fully explain it, only that the spark travels backward first. Her teammates exchanged skeptical glances, but Naruko tilted her head innocently. What? Lee nodded seriously. Naruko-chan, I have seen many of Tenten-san's practice tools, and they never behave this way. Our academy teachers explained it, too. Naruko rubbed the back of her head. Guess I missed that class. Neji scoffed, but Guy-sensei spoke up before the tension could grow. The match may continue. Tenten smirked and pulled out a scroll from her pouch, unrolling it quickly. With a graceful movement, she summoned a pair of steel tonfa that gleamed in the sunlight. No working tonfa, huh? She teased, gripping them firmly. Naruko chuckled, drawing Soul Eater again and settling into a ready stance, curved blade toward the sky, tip angled at Tenten, her left foot forward and hand poised in balance. That was all the signal Tenten needed. She charged, heavier weapon slowing her slightly, but her skill still impressive. Naruko parried swiftly, blocking each blow. This time the steel withstood Soul Eater's edge, making the duel even more engaging. After another lively exchange, Guy-sensei called for them to stop. Tenten spun one tonfa idly as she stepped back, while Naruko sheathed her sword with a satisfied grin. Very good, Naruko-chan. Guy-sensei praised warmly. I am surprised you lasted so long against Tenten, who is one of my most enduring students. And Tenten, your skill with tonfa has clearly improved. Tenten smiled proudly, while Neji raised an eyebrow at the unexpected acknowledgement. Naruko stretched lightly and looked up at Guy-sensei, excitement sparkling in her eyes. So, what's next, Guy-sensei? Do we get a mission to rescue a prince or princess or something amazing? Her hopes soared, only to be tempered by her teacher's firm tone. Not yet, Naruko-chan. Until you can fully prove your ability to protect yourself, you won't be rescuing anyone, perhaps just a kitten from a tree for now. Lee and Tenten chuckled at the image, while Naruko puffed her cheeks but smiled, eager for the challenges ahead. Naruko smiled softly to herself as she tended to her little garden. Not many people knew, but she had a quiet fondness for plants. Though she only nurtured 3 flowers, she took great pride in them. Titles didn't matter, what mattered was that these flowers were hers, and that was enough. Oi! Naruko! A cheerful voice called from below her balcony. Naruko stood and peered down to see Tenten waving with a smile. The blonde waved back. We've got a mission for you. Naruko blinked, then carefully tucked her plants into a special box she had crafted for them. She had learned from Ino's books that these rare flowers grew tall in sunlight but only bloomed in the shade. Their petals, once ready, could be used for healing remedies, a discovery Naruko was eager to test when the time came. She hopped down and landed lightly beside Tenten. So, what kind of mission? And whose place am I taking? Tenten sighed, rubbing her nose. Lee. Guy-sensei warned him not to overdo things, but he still managed to strain himself during training. He needs a little rest, so you'll be filling in for him for a few days. Naruko grinned at the thought of joining more missions. Wait, is Lee stuck at home or something? Yeah, just resting at his apartment. I left a few things to make sure he actually stays put, Tenten replied with a small laugh. Naruko tilted her head but decided not to worry about it too much. She had a mission, and that was what mattered. When do we leave? What are we doing? Are we protecting a Prin? Before she could finish, Tenten clapped a hand over her mouth. Naruko muffled a stream of words before cheekily licking Tenten's hand. The older girl pulled away in surprise, shaking her head with a laugh. Forgot you still do that. Anyway, nothing too glamorous. With you filling in, we're doing D-rank missions for a couple of days. Neji won't be thrilled, so prepare yourself. Naruko tilted her head curiously. He isn't usually thrilled anyway, right? Tenten chuckled as they walked. Yosh. My youthful students, and Naruko-chan, it is time we begin our mission. Guy-sensei appeared dramatically, and Naruko wondered if she'd survive this without her ears ringing. Later, as they worked, Naruko shared stories to lighten the mood. Tenten giggled, but Neji stayed focused, pulling weeds with silent determination. He disliked these chores, but at least it wasn't that mission. Naruko, being newer to the team, didn't understand why her teammates seemed so wary. Hours later, after an encounter with a certain mischievous cat, Naruko found herself brushing her clothes clean while glaring at the feline in Tenten's arms. Troublesome creature. She muttered. Neji silently agreed while fussing with his hair. Somehow, Tenten was spotless as always. That night, Naruko collapsed onto her bed with a sigh of relief. Her clothes were clean again, her scratches healed, and her belly happily filled with ramen. Nothing could ruin this peace. Ahem. Naruko blinked. Right, she had forgotten. Hey Riku. What's up? She greeted, smiling at the silver-haired shapeshifter who stood with her arms folded. You forgot to check in with me, Riku said, raising a brow. Naruko laughed nervously. Sorry. But honestly, nothing exciting happened today, just errands and chores. You would have been so bored. Riku exhaled, her posture softening. Fine, but at least tell me next time. I spent the day flipping through daytime shows, and believe me, utterly disappointing. Naruko chuckled as Riku continued her rant, and before long, the two of them drifted into a calm and comfortable sleep. Naruko stretched as she walked toward the training grounds where Guy-sensei's team usually gathered. It had been an unusual week filling in for Lee, but now that the energetic boy had fully recovered, Naruko was back to being more of an extra member tagging along. Ah, Naruko-chan, there you are. Come, I have a most youthful plan for you. Guy-sensei greeted warmly. Naruko rubbed her eyes and let out a small yawn while he continued, his voice full of enthusiasm despite the early hour. You shall be transferred to another team so that you may take part in missions more regularly, instead of waiting for one of my beloved students to be sidelined by an unfortunate accident. Naruko blinked, tilting her head in confusion. Wait. Transferred? Why am I only being told this now? And why didn't I just start with that team in the first place? Tenten waved her hands gently, trying to ease Naruko's surprise. Well, they lost their third member a while ago. He had to leave the program because of an injury that made it too difficult for him to continue as a shinobi. The team took a break to support him, and now they're regrouping. Since he had to retire, Hokage-sama decided it was best to assign you to them. Neji muttered something about destiny, but no one paid much attention. So, when do I meet this new team? Naruko asked. Guy-sensei pointed off to the side. Naruko turned and saw two older teenage girls and their jounin instructor. They waved politely. The sensei appeared a little younger than Guy, though Naruko already thought Guy looked older than most people anyway. As Naruko squinted, she recognized one of the girls, the one with glasses. "Oh. You're that girl I met in the library," she exclaimed. The girl with glasses brightened at the recognition. "Shiho-chan, hey, how have you been?" Naruko added, stepping closer. Everyone else looked surprised, though Shiho seemed pleased. Her teammate tapped her shoulder curiously. Shiho-chan, who is this?" Shiho adjusted her glasses nervously and introduced them. "Right, this is Naruko-chan. Naruko, this is Amane-san, our teammate, and this is our sensei, Fuka-sensei." The purple-haired and green-haired kunoichi both nodded politely. Soon, introductions were complete, and Team 9 returned to their own activities while Naruko's new group began training. Training was rigorous under Fuka-sensei. Naruko ended up lying on the ground afterward, exhausted. Shiho and Amane were in similar states, while Fuka stood with her hands on her hips. "Well, I see that you two are still not accustomed to my easy training days," Fuka said with a smile. "Naruko-san, we'll build you up gradually." Naruko groaned softly, shielding her eyes from the setting sun. "That was an easy day? What's a hard one like? Even Guy-sensei didn't push us that much." Fuka tilted her head thoughtfully. "Really? That's surprising. He and I once trained together, so I thought you'd be used to this." "Oh well." She gave a cheerful shrug. "Anyway, that's enough for today. We start our first mission together tomorrow morning, so rest well." With a quick blur of movement, she was gone. Shiho and Amane struggled to their feet, only to notice Naruko calmly stretching. "You should get up sooner," Naruko advised. "If you stay down too long, you'll be even sorer later this week." Amane gave Naruko a playful glare, while Shiho laughed softly. "Unlike you, Naruko-chan, we don't have endless energy. I'm impressed you're still standing." Naruko shrugged with a grin. "Nah, Guy-sensei had us working harder than this some days, so getting up isn't too bad. But something tells me I'm really going to feel Fuka-sensei's training later, huh?" The two teammates chuckled, and Naruko smiled wider. She loved making others laugh. Later that evening, as Naruko finished her ramen, Riku appeared beside her, holding out a training tool. "We're going to practice at night now," Riku explained. "It's easier than relying on daytime exercises, so you'll be adjusting your schedule a little. Ready?" Naruko laughed and set down her empty cup. "Always ready," she replied, taking hold of the tool. In an instant, her partner transformed into Soul Eater. Naruko's eyes gleamed with anticipation. This was going to be interesting. Naruko stretched as she sat up in bed, brushing away the last traces of sleep from her eyes and golden hair. With a sleepy yawn, she slid out from under the covers and wandered past the living room toward the bathroom, following her usual morning routine. On the way, she gave a drowsy wave to the two women sitting at the table, rubbing one eye with the other hand. It wasn't until Naruko was drying her hands that she paused, replaying the last moment in her head. Blinking, she hurried back into the living room to properly greet Riku and... What was her name again? He was certain she knew it, Kimime. No, that wasn't right. Kirho, that was it. "Good morning, Naruko," Riku said with a small smile. "Say hello to Kirho-san, our landlady. And by the way, it's almost noon. You should try waking up earlier." Naruko's eyes widened as she glanced at the clock on the wall. Nearly noon? With a startled gasp, she dashed back into her room, threw on a fresh outfit, and began tying her forehead protector. Before she could rush out the door, however, a surprisingly firm but gentle hand tugged her back. "It's the second Sunday of the month," Kirho said calmly. "That means you have the day off." Naruko blinked, tilting her head. "Wait. I do? Since when?" Kirho smiled knowingly. "It's one of the standard rules of Konoha's Shinobi Corps. At least, that was the policy when I last served a few years ago. I'm here today because you're the first Jonin ever to rent one of my penthouses. You'll be paying at the Chunin rate, but only once every 2 months. I thought it might have confused you when I didn't visit last month." Naruko nodded, finally understanding. "I wanted to give you some time to get settled in," Kirho continued. "From now on, you'll see me in 2 ways, sometimes for business, like today, and other times simply to check in and see how you're doing. You're only a little younger than my youngest Chunin tenant, so I like to make sure my residents are well." Naruko studied her red-haired landlady curiously. "You used to be a kunoichi, didn't you? You remind me of Iruka-sensei when he's explaining things." Kirho chuckled softly. "That's correct. Umino and I trained on the same team for a while, before life took me in a different direction." Riku raised an eyebrow at that, but before she could ask anything, Naruko piped up, her eyes sparkling with interest. Oh. Then who was your Jonin-sensei? Kirho just smiled and gently patted Naruko's head. Perhaps that's a story for another time. For now, I'll leave you to your day. And yes, I've already collected the rent you left in the basket. Take care. With that, she excused herself. Naruko and Riku waved goodbye as the door closed. I'd say you missed a chance to learn more, Riku said thoughtfully, but it's probably better not to pry too soon. Naruko laughed, brushing it off. Hey, I may not be the brightest in everything, but I know a few things here and there. True, Riku admitted, then tilted her head. So, since you have today free, what's the plan? Shopping, Naruko replied simply. Shopping? Yep, Naruko said as she stepped into the kitchen. We're running low on food. And unless groceries magically appear, someone's gotta get them. She looked around expectantly, almost as if waiting for something unusual to happen, then shrugged. Guess not. Oh well. Riku chuckled at her antics and went to open the door. To her surprise, a teal-haired woman stood there, hand raised as if she had just been about to knock. Hello, Yamagishi, Riku greeted politely. Fuka smiled gently and turned her attention to Naruko. Good morning, Naruko-chan. How are you? Naruko gave a small shrug, signaling she was so-so. Fuka lifted a little bag in her hand. I was planning to have lunch with a friend, but she already had plans. Since you're awake, I thought I'd bring this by and see if I could join you. Naruko's face lit up. Of course, come in. I was just about to cook with the last of my groceries. What did you bring? Together, they unpacked Fuka's bag, eggs, vegetables, and other simple ingredients. Naruko grinned. Perfect. It's been a while since I made an omelet. Soon, the kitchen was filled with the warm aroma of breakfast. Fuka and Riku tasted the first bites and looked amazed. Naruko, this is incredible, Fuka said sincerely. Seriously, Riku added, I can't remember the last time I had something this good. Naruko blushed, waving them off. You're exaggerating. I'm not that great. But both women knew she was being modest. Cooking was one of Naruko's quiet talents. After eating, Naruko finally asked the question she had been holding back. So, Fuka-sensei, when do you think we'll get a C-ranked mission? Fuka tapped her chin thoughtfully. If everything continues as it has, probably next month. You've completed enough D-rank assignments, and your progress is clear. I think you'll be ready to step up soon. Naruko grinned wide, pumping her fist in excitement, while her companions laughed at her cheerful enthusiasm. These unusual dreams had been happening often. A bright light appeared above, like sunlight breaking through, nearly blinding. Water trickled down her hair, making it even harder to see. But wait, there hadn't been any water a moment ago. Oh, right. The docks. I wonder. The water surged again, rushing past her, filling her vision with bubbles. Somehow, breathing wasn't a problem. Are these even real? Stumbling onto the beach, Naruko shook her head and smiled at the two figures waiting there, a blonde and a brunette. She admired their new appearances. One was dressed in a style more revealing than before, the other more reserved, but it wasn't her place to complain. They wore what felt right to them. Or not? Music began echoing around her. The voice singing was familiar, though she couldn't place it right away. Suddenly, bright stage lights appeared, forcing her to shield her eyes. WH? A silhouette appeared within the glow. Though she recognized the tone of the singer, the image remained hazy. Flashes of memories, things she had done, things she might yet do, filled her mind, but they felt fragmented, like puzzle pieces scattered without a pattern. She heard words carried on the song, yet they overlapped with her own thoughts. Promises, hopes, and questions all tangled together. And then, silence. Naruko opened her eyes again. Darkness surrounded her, but beneath her feet stretched a glass platform glowing softly. Its design was breathtaking, a portrait of a woman with long, pale blonde hair, dressed in a simple pink kimono. Her expression was gentle, yet striking. Naruko had never seen her before, yet for some reason, the image pulled at her heart. Moving toward the center of the platform, Naruko placed a hand over her chest. This place felt strange yet familiar, as though she had visited countless times before but could never fully remember. A voice echoed, warm yet challenging. Welcome back. It has been some time. What do you seek now? After all, the last few times you reached for me, or her, you never truly found what you were looking for. Why should this time be any different? Naruko clenched her fist and raised her gaze into the darkness. You're wrong. This time will be different. I'll find the answers, and the people I've been searching for. I won't give up. That's a promise I'll keep. The voice seemed almost amused. Brave words. But can you prove them? Can you face the challenges rising against you, the obstacles set in your path? Show me what gives you the strength to keep moving forward. Before Naruko could respond, glowing portals lined with thorny vines appeared. From them emerged pale, shifting creatures, dusks. Though she couldn't recall learning it, Naruko somehow knew what they were and how to fight them. With a flash of light, a sword appeared in her hand. Its steel shimmered silver, double-edged with intricate curves near the tip. The guard shaped like a dragon chasing its own tail, the hilt wrapped in leather for a firm hold, and at the pommel, a red gem glowed like an eye. Naruko steadied her stance as more of the strange beings appeared. Instinct guided her as one lashed out. She blocked swiftly, countering with a strike that dispersed the creature into glowing motes. Moving gracefully, she spun around two others, confusing them before striking in a dazzling arc of green energy that rippled outward. The dusks fell, but more appeared, larger, more graceful, almost like dancers. Their movements were swift and fluid, but Naruko met them with determination. Each strike of her blade released a flare of green fire, illuminating the darkness. One by one, the creatures dissolved, until at last the platform grew quiet again. Breathing heavily, Naruko lowered her weapon. Her arm ached from the weight of the unusual blade, but her spirit burned with determination. This definitely wasn't what I expected from a nap after lunch, she murmured, catching her breath as the dreamscape shimmered faintly around her. Looking around at the strange scenery, Naruko let out a soft sigh. There weren't any doors or pathways to follow, leaving her unsure of what to do next. Suddenly, the gentle sound of chimes echoed behind her. Turning, the blonde noticed that glowing glass steps had appeared, connected faintly by strands of shimmering green energy that reminded her of healing techniques she had once seen Fuka-sensei use. With one last glance behind her, Naruko began climbing the staircase. It wasn't long before she left the steps behind and reached a new platform. Standing there was a woman with short red hair spiking outward. The woman had her back turned, a flute held in her hands as though she were trying to snap it apart instead of play it. At her feet rested a curious hat, an outfit of beige and black, and a thick purple rope. Naruko tilted her head in confusion but decided the reason would reveal itself in time. She glanced around, only to find endless darkness stretching outward. Still, she sensed presences out there, too far to see clearly. Elsewhere, a young silver-haired man sneezed into his elbow, his friend with a tied-up topknot offering a quick blessing before the two returned to their books. Naruko walked toward the center of the woman's belongings and realized she had stepped into a pillar of light. To her surprise, her own shadow began to rise from the floor, shifting into a form that looked nothing like her. A massive fox with 9 flowing tails, its body made of swirling darkness, emerged with glowing golden eyes. Lightning sparked faintly within the stormy blackness, and the sheer presence of the creature made Naruko's chest tighten. This was no ordinary spirit, it radiated power that felt overwhelming, as if its very nature was to spread endless chaos. Naruko steadied herself, slipping into a defensive stance. The fox mirrored her, its many tails swaying gently in an unseen breeze. She frowned, unsure where to begin. With 9 tails and sharp claws, it had more ways to strike than she could easily count. Still, she kept her guard high, waiting for its move. The choice to wait spared her from being caught off guard, as she narrowly evaded sweeping claws and crashing tails. Her sword slashed across the creature's form, but the dark energy healed far too quickly. Great. This isn't going to be easy, she muttered, leaping back. A deep voice suddenly echoed, the fox's muzzle widening into what almost looked like a grin. Strange words in another language slipped out, followed by pillars of fire erupting from the glass floor. Naruko dodged swiftly, though sparks of heat caught her sleeve. Too hot, she exclaimed, brushing off the singed fabric. Shaking her arm, she managed to extinguish the flames. The fox's glowing eyes gleamed with amusement, but Naruko refused to back down. She recalled the advice of her training, don't let your opponent control the rhythm. Set your own pace, and you'll turn the tide. Tightening her grip on her sword, she surged forward, weaving through the lashing tails and pillars of fire. Timing her movements with precision, Naruko leapt into the air, let out a determined cry, and brought her blade down in a powerful strike. Shooting up from her pillow, Naruko breathed quickly, her face damp with sweat as she glanced around the room. No, she wasn't being swallowed by some strange fox made of shadows and anger. Everything was fine. She checked herself, no marks, no scratches, nothing unusual since she went to sleep. Weirdest dream ever, she muttered, deciding it was best not to think too much about it. Even stranger were the little flashes in her vision, something that looked like a brown-haired child standing in the corner, but after a few blinks, the images disappeared. Well, she had more important things to focus on than half-dream visions. For example, Riku had promised to show her a new technique tonight. Maybe it would help explain the glowing red dot she saw on her stomach earlier when she experimented with mixing her chakra with a little darkness in the restroom. Note to self, never do that again. Her eyes still felt strained, and she could only take so much. When her sight cleared, Naruko realized only 2 hours had passed. Shortest nap she'd ever taken. Stretching, she hopped off her bed and wandered toward the restroom, humming a cheerful tune as she waved at Riku, who was curled up on the couch reading an orange-covered book. I think Riku should have read this sooner. She might not have been so serious all the time. Maybe, Naruko thought with a small grin. Riku was so absorbed in the book that she didn't even hear the knocking at the door. Or the louder pounding. But the door bursting open definitely caught her attention. Riku nearly dropped her book before clutching it to her chest. In the doorway stood a woman with long purple hair tied up in a pineapple-shaped ponytail, a big smile on her face. She wore a trench coat over her shinobi outfit and carried herself with surprising cheer for someone who had just forced open a door. "Yo!" she greeted brightly. "Can I help you?" Riku asked cautiously. "Yep. I'm here for Blondie. She's late with the bills, and since Kirhooju-chan is away, I get to play tax collector today," the woman explained with a grin. "So why break the door open? You could have just called through it," Riku pointed out. "Hey, I had a mouthful of dengo. You'd rather hear muffled nonsense?" the woman teased, holding up a skewer with one last dumpling before finishing it off. "So, where's Blondie?" At that moment, Naruko stepped out, drying her hair with a towel. "Wait a second. Who are you? And why are you always breaking my doors?" she asked, narrowing her eyes. The newcomer blinked. "You know Yugao?" Maybe I should ask Hayate about this," she said thoughtfully. "She was one of my Onbu guards back when I started at the academy. She was really kind, actually talked to me instead of just standing there," Naruko explained with a small smile. That seemed to surprise the visitor. It wasn't often someone remembered their Onbu detail. Still, she quickly refocused. "Anyway, I'm just here to pick up the bills you're behind on." Naruko sighed, fetched a small stack of Ryo, and handed it over. The woman counted carefully, then nodded with satisfaction. "Perfect. Everything's settled. Later," she chirped before heading off. "Great. Now I need to save for new hinges," Naruko groaned. "Isn't part of the wall loose too?" Riku added helpfully. "Ugh, don't remind me," Naruko muttered. 2 days later. "And then she broke my door, took the late bills, and left me with a repair job," Naruko exclaimed, slurping happily at her ramen. Iruka-sensei sat beside her, listening patiently. Naruko had been taking on extra missions the last couple of days, so her former teacher decided to treat her as a reward for her hard work. "Uai. Naruko-san. Fuka-sensei has a mission for us." Naruko turned to see Amane waving with Shiho at her side, both smiling brightly. "Ah, sorry Iruka-sensei, I've got to run. See you later," she said cheerfully, hopping down from her stool. Iruka chuckled and shook his head, only to blink when he noticed Naruko's bowl was already completely empty. Not even broth remained. How does she eat so fast? He wondered, amused. Naruko blinked a few times. She hadn't expected that to be their mission. So, Sasuke can't finish a mission on her own? Perfect. This is just the kind of thing I can remind her about Ow. The blonde pouted at the woman who tapped her on the head. That was harder than necessary, in her opinion. Fuka kept her gaze on the third Hokage as he explained why Kakashi's team needed additional support in the middle of what was now a B-ranked mission. Whether or not Momochi had truly escaped was still uncertain. While Fuka felt her own team could use more practice, she knew this would be valuable training for the coming year. Still, she asked respectfully. "Why send a group of Jinan, Hokage-sama? Surely a Chonin or two could handle this. B-rank missions are already less common than C-rank ones." Missions were always classified in unusual ways. D and C rank assignments were the most common, often close to the village or sometimes in nearby countries, and usually finished within a month. B-rank missions, however, carried the possibility of meeting skilled enemy opponents and often lasted much longer. A-rank missions attracted adventurous jonin, testing their abilities on challenging tasks that could last anywhere from a few days to a year. As for S-rank assignments, those were nearly always reserved for Onbu. Hiruzen took a thoughtful puff from his pipe before answering. An excellent question, Fuka-kun. While there are qualified chonin, aside from protecting the bridge itself, I need you and your team to scout the surrounding town. Kakashi-kun has not done so thoroughly, aside from sending a couple of his students to the market with the client's daughter. There may be details a more varied team like yours will notice. In truth, many capable chonin were already busy. The few remaining in the village were likely academy instructors, who rotated out about once a month. The Hokage added warmly, "No, Amane-kun, I trust you and your team to manage this mission well. Team 7's members are still strong, even if their Jonin sensei is regaining his energy. It should take you only a few days to arrive, Fuka-kun. Safe travels." The elderly leader smiled as Naruko ran up to give him a quick hug before heading out. Even if it was only for a short while, she knew he would miss her bright spirit. Naruko grinned as she jogged along the road out of Konoha. Even though she had done it a few times already, C-rank missions were always exciting because they let her see new places. She had only been on 2 courier missions before, but each had taken her to completely different towns. She hoped she could visit Tanzaku-gai again someday. The castle there had been incredible. The journey to Nami no Kuni would take a while, especially without a client to escort, but Naruko wondered what her team might encounter along the way. The letter from Kakashi mentioned he had only been resting for a day, which meant the situation ahead could still be unpredictable. By Naruko's calculation, they would have only a couple of hours to rest once they reached the client's home before Fuka-sensei set them to work again. From her place on Naruko's back, Riku's voice sounded a little strained in her mind. "Could you go a little slower, Naruko? I feel like I might lose my balance." Naruko chuckled and grinned. "No way, Riku. I'd get left behind for sure. Besides, don't you have more space to move around inside my head now?" It was a recent development. Riku could now wander around Naruko's inner world even while she was awake. That left the sword spirit occasionally distracted by schedules and techniques swirling in her mind. Still, Naruko was slowly getting used to the bond they shared. Turning her attention back to the path and her teammates, Naruko began chatting with them about what they might do once they reached Nami no Kuni. Fuka-sensei occasionally added a guiding comment when their ideas strayed too far, but for the most part, the young Genin let their imaginations run as they traveled. Looking out over the sparkling shoreline, Amane tapped her chin thoughtfully. "There isn't much we can do to get across without a boat. It looks way too far to reach the island of Nami no Kuni from here, right, Fuka-sensei?" The teal-haired woman gave a small nod, folding her arms. "For you 3, yes. I could probably cross on my own, but not while carrying anyone else. Actually, Naruko, you've been practicing water walking, haven't you? You might have enough control now." The blonde girl blinked, her attention having been on balancing a leaf on her nose. "Huh? Oh, yeah. I've been doing better, Fuka-sensei. But I'm not sure I could carry everyone across at once." Fuka chuckled softly. "Not everyone. Just one person would be enough." Naruko's face lit up with determination. "Oh, then that's no problem at all. One of you can hop on, oof." Shiho had already jumped onto her back, nearly toppling Naruko into the shallow waves. "Giddy up. Hey, take it easy. And watch the hair." Naruko pouted, though she kept her balance with a grin. Fuka crouched down so Amane could climb onto her back more carefully. "We'll go steady. Remember, we'll need our energy once we reach the other side." Both blonde Genin gave affirmatives, though Naruko's was a little muffled since Shiho had decided her ponytail made a good set of reins. Dash. When they reached the far side of the bay, Naruko whistled at the sight of the path ahead. Large puddles glistened across the muddy ground, and several trees leaned sideways as if recently pushed over. "That looks like the aftermath of a really strong jutsu," Shiho murmured, adjusting her glasses. "Maybe a water-style technique. Though it must have taken a lot of chakra." Fuka's expression grew serious. "Possibly. Either way, we should stay alert and move through the trees." The team followed closely after their teacher, keeping sharp eyes on their surroundings. Suddenly, Naruko winced and stumbled, pressing a hand to her temple. "Are you okay?" Amane asked, rushing to her side. Naruko gave a sheepish grin. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just felt a weird chakra fluctuation for a second. Guess my focus slipped." Fuka nodded calmly. "Stay steady. We're almost there." The group continued forward, their excitement growing. The island adventure of Nami no Kuni awaited them, and Naruko was determined to prove her training had been worth it. Naruko felt her ear twitch as she landed lightly on a branch, quickly raising her arm to deflect a flurry of throwing needles. Thankfully, her protective mesh under armor kept her safe. "All right, show yourself," she called out with determination. Fuka and the girls landed beside Naruko. Amane peered carefully through the dense foliage, while Shiho adjusted her glasses and checked Naruko's sleeve for any damage. Fuka remained calm and observant, her sharp eyes scanning the surroundings far more effectively than her younger teammates could. Whoever was responsible for the surprise attack was either hiding very well or had already slipped away. With no further strikes coming, Fuka kept both possibilities in mind. Naruko focused her vision more intensely, channeling a special technique Riku had taught her. Colors drained from her sight, leaving everything in shades of black, white, and gray, except for one dazzling point of light. That brightness made no sense if the intruder was truly an impersonator from the Assassin Corps. Still, Naruko trusted her instincts and threw a kunai toward the glow. The blade disappeared into the foliage and then came flying back, confirming the enemy's presence. Without hesitation, Fuka sprang forward to engage, Amane following close behind. Shiho gave Naruko a reassuring nod. "Your sleeve's fine, no need for bandages. Let's go support Sensei and Amane-chan." Together, the two genin leapt forward, guided by the sounds of combat. They soon arrived at a small clearing where Fuka was already in battle with the masked opponent. Amane stood nearby, ready to assist. The teal-haired jonin moved with remarkable speed, her strikes almost too fast to follow. Naruko watched in awe. "Wow! I didn't know Fuka-sensei could move that quickly," Shiho whispered, astonished. Naruko silently agreed, her eyes tracking every movement. The masked figure was agile as well, their exchanges blurring together. Naruko knew she needed to train diligently if she ever hoped to reach that level. She remembered Riku's encouraging words, "You still have time before that becomes your real challenge. Train consistently, and you'll be able to stand strong on your own." Naruko promised herself she would. For now, she had to focus on helping her teacher. "Fuka-sensei, let me try," Naruko called. She jumped down gracefully and began darting from branch to branch, careful to stay clear of the main fight. Drawing her sword, Soul Eater, she infused it with her chakra, causing the blade to glow faintly with energy. Fuka noticed her student's preparation and created some distance from the masked figure, giving Naruko space. The intruder moved swiftly, but Naruko pressed forward, her glowing blade leaving trails of light as she launched into her attack. She shifted her position unpredictably, never striking from the same angle twice, forcing the masked opponent into a defensive dance. After several moments of this, Naruko gathered her strength. A radiant light surrounded her, energy flowing into her sword as she unleashed a burst of chakra that rippled across the clearing, scattering leaves and shaking the branches. The opponent barely managed to escape, retreating silently into the distance. Shiho gasped. "Amazing, Naruko-chan. I didn't think you could unleash such power." She quickly caught herself, noticing Fuka still watching the tree line intently, ready for any counterattack. Amane spoke more seriously. "It's a shame the enemy escaped, but at least we drove them off." Naruko nodded in agreement. Though the intruder had slipped away, the glowing trail of energy confirmed the direction they had fled. Fuka turned back to her students. "Come on. We should regroup with Kakashi and his team. They may have gathered more information about this mysterious attacker." With that, the group moved out together, ready for the next stage of their mission. Amane sighed softly as she leaned against a tree, her feet gently resting in the cool water. It had been some time since she and Shiho had last sparred, so the training session was refreshing. The lake wasn't a rushing river, but the gentle waves provided enough challenge for them to practice balance and chakra control. Naruko still struggled to stay steady on the rippling surface, especially during a spar, but she was making noticeable progress. Shiho was laughing at her teammates' attempts instead of relaxing with Amane. The other blonde was sputtering as she tried to climb back out of the water, which was only waist deep. Curious fish swam around Naruko instead of darting away, clearly entertained by her splashy fall. Fuka-sensei watched from nearby, shaking her head slightly but smiling with patience. Despite Naruko's immense chakra reserves, she still had trouble applying just the right amount. Fuka thought it was curious, someone with so much energy should have been sending herself flying off the surface by now. But that was exactly why this kind of training was important. From the shoreline, Haruno Sakura observed with a mix of admiration and envy. Naruko was clearly learning something valuable under her sensei's guidance. Kakashi-sensei had shown Sakura's team the tree walking exercise, but after only a quick demonstration, he left them to figure things out mostly on their own. Sakura had felt proud after she could run up and down a tree several times without faltering, but now she was seeing something else entirely. Naruko, who had stumbled at first, was now standing on the water's surface with growing stability. Sakura's lips pursed. Why couldn't Kakashi-sensei teach like that? Back at their client's home, Kakashi sat at the table, calmly eating his meal. His younger student, Tabayo, sat across from him, staring in quiet curiosity. "Sensei, aren't you going to eat?" Kakashi asked politely. Tabayo shook his head, keeping his eyes on Kakashi's face. "Not until you do, sensei." But before he realized it, Kakashi's plate was already empty. Kakashi rose, thanked Tsunami for the meal, and used his crutch to return upstairs for some much-needed rest. Even for a skilled jonin, chakra fatigue was no light matter, especially when dealing with long-term injuries. Elsewhere, Sasuke was practicing intensely, frustration written across his face. He had been working on chakra control exercises, but unlike Sakura and Naruko, he was struggling. Watching Naruko splash about on the water, and gradually improve, was only making him more irritated. Sakura had a reason: her chakra reserves were smaller. Tabayo was simply unmotivated. But Sasuke? He was supposed to be the top student. Why couldn't he manage it quickly? His irritation pushed him to stomp away, intending to demand better training. But as his focus slipped, his balance gave out, and he stumbled. Sakura turned at the sound of his fall and gasped. Naruko, startled, slipped into the lake with a splash, while Team 9 moved to check on the commotion. The pink-haired girl had fainted in surprise, while Sasuke lay groaning nearby. Naruko tried to help, though her attempts only got everyone wetter, much to the amusement of Team 9, who couldn't help laughing at the scene. Later that night, Naruko yawned as she sat up, rubbing her eyes. She blinked when she noticed Sasuke reaching toward the sword resting beside her. "Hey! Don't touch that," she exclaimed, quickly placing her foot between Sasuke and the blade. The sword, though harmless on its own, was still important to her. Sasuke glared slightly, rubbing his cheek. "Why should you have something so ornate? It doesn't even suit you, it would work better in my hands." Naruko crossed her arms firmly. "You don't even know how to use a sword properly." "At least I didn't end up with a hand-me-down team," Sasuke shot back. Naruko puffed her cheeks but smiled with pride. "A team that's stronger than you think. They'd surprise you in no time. And Fuka-sensei could outmatch you instantly." "Naruko. Quiet down." Sakura suddenly shouted, stomping into the room with an annoyed look, clearly upset at being woken up. "Haruno. You're louder than me." Naruko retorted playfully, hugging the sword close to her chest. The others in the house stirred at the noise, though most were too polite or too tired to complain. Sasuke sat brooding in the corner, while Naruko beamed stubbornly, refusing to let go of her treasured weapon. Dear YouTube family. That's all for now. Thank you so much for being part of this journey. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Stay tuned for more content, and until next time, this is Six Path Weeb, signing off.